Billy, give me some context here. I mean, how unusual is what we're seeing play out between the Celtics and the Cavaliers?
It's not unusual. Sometimes, even though you exchange all the medical information beforehand, things come up when they do a physical. Doctors may look at it and have different opinions than the doctors from the previous team. And so behind the scenes, there's negotiations that go on and to try to make it work. So it's not unusual. It's just with this deal, the magnitude of it, everybody's talking about it. But it's not unusual that this happens.
There are some areas of the body where an injury is okay. A guy has an elbow injury. You can live with that even if he misses a couple of weeks. How serious, as a general manager, how serious is a hip injury when you're thinking about acquiring a player?
Well, hip is very tricky in the sense of, if it's the tear of the labrum, does it need surgery? How long is it going to be? And you don't know how people's body's going to react when they start running and putting pressure on that hip again. And so that's where you're really concerned. When you start looking at the hips and shoulders and things of nature that don't really have injuries, because when a player injures a hip, it's a major injury, or a shoulder. Knees, you have torn cartilage. Even ACLs, they repair quick and they tend to come back. Shoulders and hips are very tricky, and so especially hips. And so I think it's one that you've got to be careful, just because you don't know how, if a player, when they have surgery, okay, it's fixed. When they don't have surgery, you're hoping the body heals itself. And if it doesn't, then generally surgery usually follows that. So that's where the concern is, not having surgery, not knowing how his body's going to react once he starts putting pressure back on the hip.
Is it any more or less significant when it's a smaller player, a guy the size of Isaiah Thomas?
Well, I think it's, the heavier the player is, of not being a doctor, but I think the more weight that the player puts on it, if a player is very athletic and he's jumping and, put a lot of pressure on it with the torque of jumping. But I don't think, I haven't talked to any doctors that the size matters. It may. So I would hate to go out there. But I just think when you're dealing with the hip, it's just something that's very, very tricky. I think Sam Dallenberg, when he played for us, he had a little hip problem, and, we dealt with it, but it didn't require surgery.
Talking to Billy King, former Nets and Sixers general manager, joining me here, Dan Patrick Show. All right, so what do you imagine the conversations are like now and in the next couple of days between the Celtics and the Cavaliers?
Well, I think now it's probably pretty intense, pretty testy, because of the fact of when you make a trade nowadays, the NBA, you have to, before you even get on the trade call with the league, you have to disclose all the medical information. And knowing what his hip and everybody knowing his hip because it happened on the playoffs, I'm sure Boston gave him every piece of medical information they had in writing. A lot of times you have the two doctors talk beforehand. You exchange MRIs, X-rays, anything you have to give to them. And so from the Boston standpoint, they've got to be a little probably frustrated because we probably gave you everything. But from Cleveland standpoint, okay, we had everything. Now we examine them. Our doctors have a little different opinion. And so I think it's the Cleveland Clinic that he was supposed to go see again. So it's, you wonder how much information that they have even beforehand, even though with the HIPAA rules, some things they can't disclose, not until they're on the trade call.
It doesn't sound, Billy, like the Cavaliers want to void this deal. It sounds like they just want a sweetener to make it work for them. We've heard the name Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown floated. That seems pretty ludicrous to me. I think a first-round pick might be off the table as well. What would you imagine would be an acceptable sweetener for the Celtics to throw in here?
Well, I think that Cleveland's trying to get another asset from it, whether it's a first-round pick. I think a second is something that, they would take, but I think they're trying to get a first if they can get another first forward, because they're looking at not having Isaiah Thomas possibly the beginning of the season, and if he needs surgery, maybe most of the season. So I think they're trying to get another asset so that they can say, okay, at least we've got two first-round picks for that asset for him not being able to play. We'll let Derrick Rose play and work from there. But from Boston's standpoint, I think they're in a tough situation because you've already traded Isaiah Thomas. He's a little frustrated. Everybody knows. But I think if they bring him back and say, okay, it didn't go through, we tried to trade you, it happened, you got to come back and get healthy. And if he's not able to play, they play Terry Rozier and those other guys, and they still have all their assets. Cleveland then, in return, has a Kyrie Irving who wants out, and so now they've got to go and try to find a deal that's better than the one that's on the table with Boston. I don't know if they can find that.
Which team is it more problematic for if this trade gets voided, Cleveland or Boston?
Well, I think it'd be Cleveland from my standpoint because I think you'll have a frustrated Kyrie Irving. Now LeBron probably be frustrated because of the fact of he was probably pretty excited about this deal. So I think from Cleveland's standpoint, then they got to go and regroup and try to make it another trade. And now everybody knows even more that you've got to trade them before, with a month to go before training camp starts. Boston, you're going to have some hurt feelings. You know, Isaiah Thomas coming back hurt, but I think Boston then will have all their assets. They have Crowder back, and and then they've got players that can fill in. They can't score like Isaiah Thomas, but they have players that can fill in and they can continue to build.
If they don't, if this trade falls apart, if I'm Cleveland, I bring Kyrie Irving to camp. I say screw it. I say you get 2 years left in your contract. Maybe we'll revisit this December 15th when guys that can be traded, they're signed in the offseason, can be traded. But, I mean, when I talk to Cleveland players, Billy, the one thing they tell me is that our entire team exists in a consistent state of dysfunction. We're constantly, there's constant drama from the Kevin Love stuff to David Blatt. I mean, there's very few smooth days in the Cavaliers organization. I think there are people inside that organization that believe they can ride this out and bring Kyrie to camp and still be the best team in the Eastern Conference and maybe deal him a little bit later down the line.
Yeah, but I think this is different. I think when Kevin was talking about being possibly traded, Kevin Love, it was a possibility. This is one where he was traded. He asked for a trade. He got traded. He comes back. You go back to the video of him at the wedding with Steph Curry, and I think the media scrutiny on this will make it more difficult to succeed. Because I think everybody will be looking for anything. If Kyrie throws a pass to LeBron and it wasn't on target, people say, "Oh, look, that he was trying to mess up the pass." So I think this one would be very, very difficult. I think the locker room would be very toxic. Even though they say they lived in dysfunction, this would be too toxic, I think, for them to succeed.
It set a bad precedent, though. A guy with 2 years left in his contract who just coming off a third straight final season. And then isn't there, wouldn't you want to tell him to shut up and play?
Well, I think that's been going on. I know the league put rules in where players can't publicly demand a trade, but they do it behind the scenes with their agents and like that. And I think that's been happening in the league, where guys have 2 years, guys have 3 years, and they say they want out, and teams, you trade them because it's better for the cohesion in the locker room. But yeah, this is it's not right. But then again, if you look at it from the Isaiah Thomas situation, his sister passed away. He goes and plays and flies back and forth, plays in the playoffs, plays hurt, and gets traded. And so it's a two-way street. Teams do things that players don't like by making trades that they say, "I'm loyal to you, and now you trade me." Or teams are loyal to them, they want to be traded. So I think it's been happening from both sides, where teams trade guys or who want to stay where they are, and players leave, and teams want them to stay. So it's been happening in the NBA, and I think it's going to continue to happen, which is not good for the league, because I think the fans want some kind of loyalty to them, not to if you're not going to be loyal to your franchise, or not going to be loyal, or the team's not going to be loyal to the player, please somebody be loyal to the fans. I think that's what the fans are looking for, because they're paying their hard-earned money. They want loyalty back to them.
You think the deal gets done?
I think at the end of the day it does. I think they'll end up getting it done. I think Boston may sweeten it. They won't sweeten it to what everybody's reporting. I think Jason Tatum or Brown put in won't happen. But I think it does get done, because at the end of the day, Cleveland, you may not get a healthy Isaiah Thomas, but you're getting a hell of a pick, and you're getting Jay Crowder. I think is a big part of the deal. You're getting the young center, so I think they're getting some assets that can help them going forward. Because I think they were a team that was an older team. Now getting some young picks going forward that helps them rebuild. So helps them rebuild. Say if LeBron leaves, or and even if Isaiah is not able to come back till January, you're going to get an Isaiah Thomas that's going to be very motivated to go out there and prove to everybody. I'm not saying that I know that's when he'll be back, but I think he can get back on the court. And when he does, he'll be a motivated player. And you still got the best player in the world, LeBron James. So you can try to squeeze Boston, but I think Boston is, if they take a step back and don't get to the conference finals, they're still young enough they can continue. So I don't think they'll give up any more than they have. And I say that Tatum or Brown, they may throw in the Memphis pick, but that may be a good pick down the road as they're starting to rebuild in there. So, maybe they throw in a protected pick or something like that to try to just get it to go away, because they are getting a heck of a player who's on the contract, and Kyrie Irving.
You got to be sad to see that last Nets pick leave Boston.
Well, it's something that happened. It's going to stick with me, and I understand that. But at the time, as I've told you before in your podcast, at that time, ownership and management, we had a plan, and the plan changed, and that's the prerogative of ownership. So, but I will be glad when it's over with.
Just blame Bobby Marks. I do. Blame it on him.
No, the one thing, as I said when I was there, is I told ownership when I took the job, I said, hey, we all make decisions together as a group, and we're going to be as a group. And I look at it, we did that as a group, and it didn't work, and they made a decision to go in a different direction. And I'm still friends with Mikhail and Dimitri, and I wish them luck. But that's the business that I chose to be in.
Hey, always great to visit with you, Billy. Appreciate the time.
You're welcome. Take care, guys.
That's Billy King, the former Nets Sixers GM, joining me here on The Dan Patrick Show.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.